Arc 6, The Corridor of Memories. Chapter 61, Stand Up. A choice, that too a cruel one, was eating into Natsuki Subaru. He heard the sound of something being abandoned and scorched away within the interior of his chest with a sizzling report, slowly and steadily. That was his human nature, his emotion of trusting himself, his sentiments for Natsuki Subaru, various entities of such kind, were being abandoned and scorched away. With his hands on the young girl's throat, whilst being ridiculed by the young girl pushed down, Natsuki Subaru was made to stand in a setting of determining his own destiny, Natsuki Subaru's destiny. Heartbeats, inaudible. Though his breath was rough, his lungs were probably dysfunctional. A situation packed to the hilt to such an extent, yet not a single drop of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. That was certainly because Natsuki Subaru's flesh body present here was not a part of reality. By reading the book, he did not have his entire flesh body transferred, but merely his mind had been halted to make such considerations unfitting the situation, would also merely be a deed of evading reality. And, by firing his considerations over to the other side, trying to secure transient peace was Subaru's heart. However, neither time nor space nor his opponent would pardon this escape route of Subaru's. Lewis, well, what'll you do, Onie-san? The young girl, which had been pinned down by him, laughed sadistically and looked up at Subaru, petrified, having lost his way in the choice. Whilst peeping into Subaru's dark eyes, the young girl flickered her tongue in order to lick those eyeballs. Lewis, pinning down a feeble young girl and placing your hands on that thin neck. Gets you shivering with thrill, no? Or perhaps instead, if it's a predisposition like that of Onie-san's, such experiences become commonplace, is that right? Subaru, Huck. Lewis, you're trembling, so cute. In this state, will you be able to make such an important choice? Inclining her neck, Lewis, facing upwards, kissed Subaru's wrist. That shuddering gesture and the ardor pouring from her flirtatious glance, her inhumane words made Subaru recall a certain spectacle. That was the spectacle of the callousness Subaru had acted upon once. Provided that his way of having observed it was the reverse. Not something Subaru had witnessed from his own perspective, but the field of vision of a young girl who had gotten into a confrontation with Subaru. The spectacle of Subaru pinning down, with a wicked countenance, and strangling the neck. Exactly the same as the present situation, the spectacle of Natsuki Subaru strangling Meili to death. Subaru, ugh. The instant he realized this to be approximate to that spectacle, Subaru's entire body, cheeks, tightened. Lewis, so after all, there really is an occasion which comes your mind? Subaru, non's hook. Nonce. Lewis, we're not speaking nonsense, you know. Instead, the one not being serious is Onie-san, no? With more seriousness, earnestness, solemnity, you should love yourself. Lewis, yes. Love yourself. See, love. Similar to how the people Onie-san wants to cherish hope for that, Onie-san should also love himself, you know. With a superficial verbal tone, and words fitting identical description, a cosmetic wave of words was formed. Did she intend to persuade him, or instead, was her faculty of sympathizing simply dead? Was this purposeful or was it simply her nature? Was she jeering at him or was she consoling him? It was vague. Louis Arnev's way was vague with regards to everything. Vague it was. Louis's words, her words were unsteady from the foundation, like leaves instably afloat water's surface. All of them of arbitrary nature, bent and distorted. If they preferably came to a clear disposition, then this indecision itself would surely be cleared up as well. No, just how hazardous would it be to consider keeping her words as the premise from the very beginning? Subaru, do you have the proof? That everything should be done the way you say, and everything will happen the way you say. Lewis, proof? Subaru, do you have the proof that if I regain Natsuki Subaru, the me present right now would disappear? Lewis, we don't. We don't, you know. It seems we don't. As we don't. We don't, we're telling you. We don't though. Even though it seems we don't. It seems we don't as we're telling you. Even though it means we don't, you know. Will that give you any solace? Lewis, it's just going around in circles, Onie-san. Even we can't speak of what we don't know. If we or Onie-chan and Ai-sama die, then will what was eaten come back, we wonder. To be honest, never return something which we ate so we don't actually know. After all, we've eaten it up, you know. Saying Lewis opened her mouth, arraying her frightfully sharp cuspids and scarlet tongue, showing until the interior of her throat to Subaru, appealing a certain zilch. Others' memories, the memories of someone within others. If heisting things of such kind was to be taken under the name of eating, it was impossible for physical vestiges to remain there. However, Subaru felt the words eaten it up to be terribly weighty. Lewis, what will you do, Oni-san? Once again, Lewis questioned Subaru. In the interval between the questions and answers, Subaru's hands remained on Lewis's neck. Unable to pour strength, or otherwise, completely withdraw his hands, Subaru continued to cast aside the question regarding his own existence. Subaru, GH. Hook. Dying was frightening. Terrifying. However, that was a fear differing from what Subaru had tasted by return by death 4 times till now. The proposition pressing down Subaru's soul right here and now was the death comparing and contrasting the choices regarding forfeiting oneself. By nature, that was how what was labeled as death was supposed to be. Upon dying, the consciousness of that existence was lost, and something like an opportunity to redo was never granted. That was why Subaru, who continued to take advantage of having opportunities to redo upon making blunders, may not have any right to complain. To simply be given the choice to disappear or to not disappear, and having the time to be troubled over it may itself be a luxury. But it was his own life. He must choose whether he would blow that flame out or not by himself. Subaru's heart, who had been interposed in such a situation, developed a crack by each passing second. Subaru had already died 4 times in this different world. All of them, affairs within a short time frame. Thrown into a world he was unacquainted with, meeting people he never would have met, and an instant later having to suffer circumstances difficult to avoid, chased Subaru into death. The time he spent when he was in a conscious state, when totaled, would not even fit into 2 days. It was a short time. However, Natsuki Subaru also had the time of 17 years he had lived in the world he was previously in aside from the 2 days of this different world. He had a father. He had a mother. Friends too, though scarce, his relationship with them was a delicate matter and it was uncertain whether he could call them friends, but he had people whom he would at least exchange greetings with. Upon glancing back onto the past, in elementary and middle schools he had people whom he got along with, and he was also acquainted with many who resided in his neighborhood. Though, it did not go well. Subaru was incompetent at life. However, in vain of not going well, there had been a time of trial and error. Though he had never been in a setting where his life was on the line, Subaru still intended to struggle upon his own stage. Was he going to abdicate these various times and accumulated memories? Should Natsuki Subaru return, the fact that they existed would not disappear. However, his current self, who certainly thought of those times, shall disappear. Exchanging promises with Ram, swearing to protect Meili, etching Echidna's forgiveness upon his heart, aggressively imploring Julius to fight, affectionately trusting Beatrice and Emilia. His self, who fell in love with Emilia, was he truly going to disappear? Subaru, no. That realization made the flesh body of Subaru present here on this spot develop cracks, this not being a metaphorical expression. Crevices emerging on his cheek, fissures like a spider's web emerged on both of his hands, which were on Lewis's throat as well. He felt no pain. Neither did he bleed from those crevices. Mysteriously, present within the crevices was darkness. Not the sort possessing flesh or bones, unnatural, unending darkness. It was in accordance with what he had conjectured, he had not carried over his flesh body of reality. The body of the Subaru present here was not real. And since it was not real, the current sentiments of his heart directly manifesting, Subaru's body developed fissures, and was shattering. The crevices expanded, the surface came unstuck and fell. That was certainly the body of deceit called Natsuki Subaru, which Natsuki Subaru had been wearing. Alongside that which detached and fell in large drops, even his bluff came unstuck and fell. Subaru, no. No. Hook. Lewis, that's right. It's natural, you know. Shaking his head in refusal, he denied the fear of the death awaiting him, no, the fear of forfeiting. Why must he vanish? His self, who had just recognized that he was in love with the person he loved. Subaru, no. Lewis, HMHM. We get it. We quite do get it. As we get it. We do indeed get it. Subaru, no, I refuse. Hook. Lewis, it's Oni-san's life, after all. Why must you surrender it to others, you know? Subaru, everyone. More, with everyone. Want to stay longer with everyone. He was in love. He had fallen in love. Even though in the time which would not even amount to a total of 2 days, he had been engulfed in doubting them, thinking of killing them, thinking of running away from them, and being suspected by them. Subaru had fallen in love with them. Right now, he thought lovingly of them. If he were to stay with them, if they would cherish Subaru, then he might even grow to love himself, whom he utterly loathed. That was what he thought. Facing forward, that was what he thought. Even though in Subaru's life of always facing backward, this was, at long last, a scintillating spot of sunshine. Why must he relinquish it? That was something he. Subaru, I refuse. Louis, that's right. That's how it is. Then, what do you think you should do? Subaru, I, just as myself. Louis, yes, Onie-san will be, just as Onie-san. That is correct. It got plundered once. It's a game of musical chairs. The guy sitting on the vacant seat is the king, you know. Louis, the opponent who got pushed away, must exit. You have to recognize your own existence. You have to shout loudly that you are real. Hey, isn't that so? Directly below him, at a distance such that their breaths intertwined, widening, her eyes illumined blazingly, Louis roared. With vigor like that of snarling no, as a matter of fact, she gnawed Subaru's wrists, which were on her neck, etching admonition and a striking pain upon Subaru. Staring at the wavering dark eyes, Louis Arnab shouted. Louis, recognize. Natsuki Subaru is the closest person to Onie-san Su. The howl called for him, telling him to establish oneself. Telling him to stop doing something so foolish as dying for the sake of someone. Why must there be a need for him to sacrifice himself for the sake of someone or the other? That too, for the sake of having his self who wasn't himself, who named himself as him, meet the people he loved, whom he won't be able to meet anymore. All for the sake of him ceding the time he had spent with them, the priceless days difficult to ever obtain. As if he would allow himself to do something so foolish. Louis, well then, kill him. Let's kill him. Let's go ahead and kill him. You have to kill him. Do kill him. If you kill him, let's end up killing him. Just kill him. End up killing him. If you can only kill him. If you kill and crush him. Subaru, Natsuki Subaru will. Louis, Onie-san is this universe's one and only, not a substitute article for anyone, Natsuki Subaru. Subaru, Huck. This universe's one and only, not a replacement for anyone, Natsuki Subaru. Holding hands with Beatrice, striking persiflage with Ram, making Meili pout, being astonished by Shala's frankness, exchanging smiles with Echidna through frivolous conversations, entrusting his back to Julius, receiving Patrash gratis love, attaining the right to live, with Amelia. If the one who possesses those was Natsuki Subaru, then, by Subaru's hands, that man shall. Tears building up, his field of vision was blurred by the sentiments welling up within of him. His mind had a direct impact on his flesh body. The beating of his heart, his breathing through aching lungs, he could unmistakably feel them vividly right now. However, what he could feel the greatest right now, were his irresistible tears wielding no answer. Whether that was rage or grief, envy or jealousy, guilt or fear. Just, what was the cause of this violent emotion, Subaru did not know whatsoever. There was lots he did not know. However, with his field of vision fogged by those tears, Subaru looked. Someone was overlooking Subaru, Louis. Staring at the teary-eyed pathetic Subaru, who had pinned Louis down and had his hands on her neck. Whom that could have been, within what all Subaru's mind could grasp, it could have been only one person. Subaru, did you appear because you got scared of me, Natsuki Subaru? The blurry shadow of a person said nothing. Standing on the white floor, the white world behind its back, the form veiled in gaze of white, was watching Subaru. Subaru, with his face soggy, informed the existence who had panicked and abruptly appeared forth. Subaru, I will. I will, not disappear. I don't want to die. That's why, I. Subaru, want to stay together with everyone. I love everyone. That's why, I am. Subaru, that's why, I am. As though an excuse, his complaints stockpiled. Same as when he had put his hands on Louis's throat. Subaru had concluded that he didn't want himself to disappear. That's why, what he did now was conveying that to the shadow of a person which had appeared. That also meant that he would, with certainty, kill the opponent before of his eyes, who possessed an identical visage as himself. After all, he is Natsuki Subaru is, the closest person to him. That is why, Subaru must be in possession of that right. Natsuki Subaru shall kill Natsuki Subaru, and the single spot of sunshine shall be. Subaru, that's why, I am, not you. You and I are different, he tried to convey that clearly, and sever the possibility. That had been the moment he had tried to do so. Louis, who are you talking to, Onie-san? Dumbfounded, eyes dilated, Lewis questioned with an expression as if her conversation had been stalled. She inclined her neck and glared in the same direction as Subaru, and tried to look at that shadow of a person. However, she knitted her eyebrows in doubt and grimaced, and as her sharp canines quivered. Lewis, nobody's there, but still, who are you talking to, Onie-san? With her fangs rattling and trembling, Lewis whispered so with an expression of disbelief. In refusal, she erased her expression until then, and made a face like that of being frightened by something. Lewis, this is our place. No hindrances are supposed to get in, and yet. In this place, talking to someone aside from us. Just stop. Onie-san is our. Sue. Lewis' words, they clung onto him, however Subaru's awareness did not move a bit. Subaru's awareness had focused all concentration on the yet present shadow of a person in his field of vision, not having vanished. His field of vision blurred with tears, the wavering shadow of a person, its contour and features became ever so slightly clear. Who was it? He had no idea whatsoever. That shadow of a person whose contour and features gradually got clearer, to Subaru seemed as though it was smiling. Shaking his head, blinking with strength, he tried to look at that diminutive smile with further clarity. "Why, are you trying to choose only one of the two?" A question was raised towards him. With a voice he had never heard before, with the voice of someone who was not supposed to be here. Whom he had never seen smiling. A young girl of blue hair had been standing there, smiling. That smiling young girl, whilst continuing to smile, towards Subaru who had sunk in silence said, "Stand up." Her commencing words. The young girl, with the utmost relentless voice in the world, shouted at Natsuki Subaru. "Stand up." The voice vanquished the cracking Natsuki Subaru, scourged him, and knocked him down. Without mercy, without hesitation, the bellowed shattered Natsuki Subaru, and accelerated his cracking. As if, talons artlessly stabbing into his naked heart. "Stand up." The young girl of blue hair raised her voice facing Subaru. Glaring at Subaru, the young girl, with a loud voice, howled. Howled. She was howling. At Natsuki Subaru, who remained on his knees, who had pinned a young girl down, and had fissures emerge on his dumbfounded face. "Stand up." Her bellow repeated. Limitlessly and endlessly, callously and inconsiderately, it knocked Subaru's heart down. Why must such words strike him? It was painful. It was hurtful. It was excruciating. It was sorrowful. His heart, even now, was on the verge of shattering. Never in his life had he been struck with such agonizing decisions from one to the next without even having prepared his heart beforehand. He had somehow stopped lamenting that crisis. That was why, at the very least, he had arrived at a conclusion. That is why, was it not just fine anymore? Stand up. The young girl before his eyes, by no means approved of the complaints, the obstinate conclusion, the heart afraid to forfeit, making Subaru's heart cower. Lated with a resolute purpose of rejection, she piled up the potent words. He had made the decision. Could she not just affirm it? At the very least, show being troubled over it. It was all right, was it not? He had been troubled sufficiently. Yet, the young girl went so far, all for the sake of having Subaru be. Stand up. As his heart continued to shatter to fragments, she did not pardon Subaru, who had made the decision. Stand up. Was she still going to say that? Why was this young girl, this voice? Despite it being so hurtful, so excruciating. Stand. 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 Stand up. Just who was this young girl? Just where in his reminiscences was this young girl? Never had he exchanged words with her. Even her reminiscences were not present within the current Subaru. Who was she? What kind of a person was she? He had known merely her outward appearance. Their relationship was one such that he would not even bother giving up for her sake. Yet, why was his chest so warm? Why was there a fever rising from the interior of his chest? Stand up, Natsuki Subaru. Stand up. Rem-S hero. The tearful voice of the young girl not present in his memories, shouted to be a hero by that voice, his heart trembled. Subaru's heart trembled, in such a good condition that he almost wanted to laugh, with the notion of something so absurd as that being possible. The cracks, the fissures, continued to accelerate. That was, quite literally, the spectacle of Natsuki Subaru tearing apart the shell of Natsuki Subaru. However, what slept within that shell, only faintly varied from what was there just previously. No, if it were to truly change, it shall from now onward. Continuing to be wished to stand up, gnashing his teeth at his frightened heart, he stood up. If you stood up, then please go. Go, and save everything. Everything, what does that mean? Everything, just what did it mean? A way of speaking far too absent-minded. Just what did everything even refer to? Everything is everything. Anything and everything. All, everyone, yourself, and the closest person to you as well. What's that? As if something like that is achievable. Does this girl truly believe he was capable of that? His self, who lacked in much, who can't even save himself. For the sake of the people Subaru fell in love with, for the sake of the people who cherished Subaru, for the sake of the people Subaru wished to cherish, for the sake of his reminiscences with the people he did not want to disappear. Does she truly believe that the Subaru, who had tried to let go of merely one, is also capable of it? You can do it. After all. After all. After all, what? Give me the strength, the answer. If you're going to give them, then give them through those words. I pray that the blue young girls, your words, give me. Rem, Saburokuan is, Rem's hero. Subaru. Something fell in the interior of chest. That which had stagnated in black, as if had been purified by the echo of the young girl, seemingly a confession of love. No, not seemingly a confession of love. That had been a confession of love. Though once again, his reasons for not wanting to give back the place where he belongs to Natsuki Subaru increased. Subaru, ah. At the same time, what had increased was not just that. Purified by the words of the young girl, that which had stagnated in black gave rise to radiance and altered its very form. And commenced pulsating from what was the strongest desire stemming from the core of Natsuki Subaru. It pulsated. That which had lost anything and everything, and had been deserted by entirety. Yet furthermore, wishing, desiring, wanting to fasten and secure everything, wanting to not lose anything at all from these hands, wanting to not let go of oneself, from oneself's own hands. Concording with the cowardly greed which implored so, it bloomed by becoming a power which granted this wish. The factor wandering and jolting, connected together with existence. Subaru, come, Corleones. Within Subaru, the seed of the greed lost of destination budded. And, standing firm, his form was Rem. Merely the diminutive smile of the young girl of blue hair blessed that moment. Louis, Onii-san? Looking up at Subaru, who had slowly stood up at that spot, Louis called out to him. Pulling the hand that had been on her neck, Louis, with bafflement remaining on her expression, woke her body up from the golden bed her hair had been blanketing and blinked in seeming perplexement. Louis, what happened? Look, continue the one from earlier. Continue it? Louis, continue it. Being told to resume, Subaru moistened his lips with his tongue. When contemplating as an existence of mere mind, both this and temporary peace of mind were not but meaningless actions closer to habits. However, by that single action, he had come to notice something. He was clear-headed to such an extent that even he himself would be surprised. The incomprehensible chaos and frenzy until a moment ago, just as both of them had been pulled away by waves, he felt at peace as if swimming in the middle of a calm sea. That is why. Subaru, you don't need to say anything anymore. I'm fed up of your gut-wrenching explanation. He had managed to recognize how the clod of malice which had taken the form of a young girl before his eyes twisted and distorted Subaru's will and use it as per her own conveniences. At what Subaru had pointed out, Louis said no and shook her right and left. Louis, gut-wrenching you say? How harsh. Even though we had, in our own way, properly thought of Onii-san and just given advice. Subaru, also, stop using words I know for purposefully making it seem sarcasm about myself like this. Even if you try to shake me like this, it's of no use. The present me will no longer waver. At those words, Louis straightened her eyes. Surely she was unaware of the details of what changes had occurred in Subaru's self. Even Subaru did not specifically know. However, the greed which shall not waver by anything had decided upon Natsuki Subaru. Subaru had also defined himself into the form wished by the young girl, who had shouted at none but the Subaru of that moment. Subaru glanced at not Louis, but the side opposite to her. There no longer was the form of her, who had not too long ago faced Subaru and smited him with words relentless. The moment Subaru stood up and faced forward, she disappeared. But, perhaps, that was fine. The reunion with the young girl was not to take place here, and neither with Subaru. No, that was not exactly accurate either. Merely, the one to reunite with her must be the Natsuki Subaru who has recovered his memories with her, his feelings for her. And there was no need to form a distinction between that Natsuki Subaru and Natsuki Subaru. Subaru, I was told. Time and time again, still huh? He had been told that even after losing his memories, Subaru was Subaru. When he stubbornly used to think that there was a precise, distinct disparity, that he must differentiate, those had been Subaru's encumbrance, chains of curse. But, so what? Right now, from Subaru's perspective, who had ascertained what he must do, that was a guidepost, a thread of hope. It shall surely light Subaru's path until he pulls it in, reels it in, gets closer, and reaches the place where the people whom he cherishes, who were holding the front of that thread were. That was WHY. Subaru, put away your knife and fork, you food-thieving escaped fugitive. There's no noodle soup for you here. She widened her eyes. Louis Arnab widened her eyes, staring at Subaru who had a finger pointed towards her. And perceiving the absence of even the slightest sympathy in Subaru's expression, she cast her eyes down. Louis, ah. Her eyes cast down, she leaked a husky sigh. That had been a sigh conceived with emotions highly difficult to delineate. Louis, who got her body up, had her shoulders shake, drew her knees towards herself, and curled up atop her golden carpet. And, slowly elevating her face, which had been cast downward. Louis, ah, shit. A single step more was left, and yet. With a gaze brimming in abhorrence, Louis glared at Subaru and wrung that out with a voice as though casting a curse. Louis, a single step more was left, and yet, huh? Why, how come, did it fail, huh? Who tricked Onie-san, huh? That was a tone of voice which reached a murky conclusion, hatred towards isolation like that of the dead from the depths of hell envying the way of being of the living celebrating paradise above ground. With a voice filled with such resentment, Louis resumed. Louis, with a single step more, Natsuki Subaru could have been completely torn apart and yet. Subaru, what's up with that? Why'd you do something like that? Louis, isn't it obvious, because we can't eat the same human twice too? Subaru, huck. Painting out Subaru's dubious voice, Louis screamed with a cracking voice as if vomiting blood. She set her limbs on that spot and then stood up, and with an expression completely changed from what it had been until then with a countenance like that of a beast which had lost its human kindness, she glared at Subaru. Louis, it each had to be separate. The Natsuki Subaru who got eaten once, and the Natsuki Subaru left to be eaten each had to be separate. For that, we had concentrated attention on this plan or that, and yet. It was all stupidity. Laughable, isn't it? Subaru, I won't laugh. It's not funny, not one bit. Louis, is that so? Is that really so? But Onie-san also hates us, isn't that right? Isn't it fun to see our hated self being sad? It must be feeling good, right? Even though Onie-san would have. Only you would have fulfilled us, who've gotten sick of eating. By only you, us of satiation could we eat Sue. At Louis, her eyes bloodshot, Subaru whispered satiation within his lips. If he had not misheard her, the title she had named herself as was supposed to be gluttony. Why would that now turn into something like satiation? In front of Subaru, who was perplexed in that manner, Louis shouted, saying to begin with, whilst looking up into the white sky. Louis, both lay of gourmet. And Roy of bizarre eating. No, absolutely nothing. From one to the next, thoughtlessly unbridledly eating messily like a bunch of idiots. For our sake, who are locked up here and don't have the freedom to choose. Don't make us laugh, hopeless siblings Sue. Embracing and bringing her yellow hair close to her, Louis disheveled her body and spat. Her words, Subaru, whilst standing straight, was unaware of all what they meant. Lay or Roy, those which she had brought up, could they be names, perhaps? However, the existence of gluttony, memories, there were certain things he could discern from them. Subaru, you, get together with your comrades and things like people's memories and names. Is it fine to notate it as that? At any rate, you go around stealing things like that. Go around eating things like that. Isn't that right? An instance of getting his memories eaten, and forgetting who his own self was would be Subaru. An instance of getting his name eaten, and being forgotten by the surroundings and lamenting would be Julius. And, perhaps getting both sides eaten, forgotten by the world and falling into a slumber never to awaken from was Rem. All of them were deeds of gluttony, of Louis, and her comrades whose names got brought up earlier. Subaru, why the hell are you all doing something like that? What is the goal, of all of you? Louis, it has to become happy. Made to hear the immediate reply, Subaru halted his breath. Paying no heed to his reaction, Lewis resounded her teeth by clattering them with seeming instability of mind. Lewis, it's to become happy. What other goal is there? To become happy is the goal of living, isn't it? Or, did you think that our loathed self had distorted away from that? Wrong. That's wrong. It's wrong anyway. As it's wrong. Certainly it is wrong. As it's too wrong. It seems it's wrong. As we're telling you it's wrong. Ah, our soul hurts. Sue. Subaru, what's the connection between the goal of becoming happy and stealing others' memories? Lewis, say Oni-san, have you ever thought life is unfair? Subaru, I have. Lewis, what Sue? Her teeth into the back of her white hand, Lewis questioned Subaru. When Subaru nodded his head in agreement as a matter of prompt judgment, Lewis loathsomely laughed, saying of course. Whilst writing, she had her hand with impressions of her teeth crawl up her slim chest. Lewis, we have, too. Rather, life is unfairness itself. Can't choose birth, can't choose parents, can't choose the environment, can't choose the future, not a single thing can be chosen. Always, it's made to be a system of that kind. It's being atop a belt conveyor. Lewis, but what if that wasn't the case? In front of the silent Subaru, Lewis tilted her neck. Lewis, what if birth could be chosen? What if parents could be chosen? What if the environment could be chosen? What if the future could be chosen? What if all options were as per imagination? Everyone would choose a better life, isn't it? Is that wrong? Subaru, that may be true, but what was the associativity between that and Lewis and the others' crimes? Subaru pondered. However, Lewis clanged her teeth at that doubt of Subaru's. Lewis, that's it. Subaru, Lewis, if birth could be chosen, if parents could be chosen, if the environment could be chosen, if the future could be chosen, if all options were as per imagination, everyone would choose a better life. That is why we are taking time and making utmost effort, and searching the greatest life for us. Lewis, surely, it is somewhere, Sue. Where we can live with our head held high, like us. A future filled with roses, such that we'd think we were glad to have lived this life. Until the time of fortuitously meeting that destined life, we'll eat, crunch, chew, lick, suck, indulge, gluttonous drinking, Sue. Glutton eats Sue. Her eyes dazzling blazingly, Lewis Arnebb shouted her lovely ambition out with a roaring voice. She truly believed, from the bottom of her heart, that this was pursuit for happiness, that this was the sole way for her to grasp the supreme future for herself. Lewis had not discovered any hopes, any expectations for her own life. For in her mind, the life of the young girl named Lewis Arnebb had been inferior in its initial disposition. The starting point had been incorrect. That is why she wanted to negate that. She wanted to win and gain herself, who was abound in birth, parents, environment, future, talents, everything. She had defined precisely that to be an indispensable condition for enjoying life to the maximum. That is why. Subaru, for that, you steal the memories of others and eat them. Lewis, once the desired life is found, by affixing the memories and name, we will live that life with our head held high. Unfortunately, as of now, everyone's been omitted from being selected. There had been lives which were on the right track, but, we won't be satisfied by a few meager experiences. Speaking enthusiastically with a trembling voice, Lewis had her finger gently crawl upon her petite body beneath her patchy clothes, and made a charming gesture unbefitting her age. No, that was not the case. If Gluttony's words were true, then she had eaten the lives of innumerable people until now, and through that had procured an amount of resources of experiences beyond what any ordinary man could physically experience. Men, women, children, elderly, possibly leaping over the fences of even races or species, having her fill of the experiences of every possible existence, tasting them till finishing, a person who indulged in the satiation of lives. It was just as how Lewis had called herself. She had grown tired of eating the lives of others. For her, who continued to snitch and eat the delicious parts of the lives of all kinds of people, all possible happenings were stale articles, the same hackneyed events with nothing novel to them. But, just as when he understood Lewis's mental state, he also discovered something he could not understand. That was Subaru, then why did you, who practices such an unbalanced diet, go as far as to use that pain in the butt measure to try and chew me? Is it your obstinacy as a food fighter, something like never excusing what was left to be eaten? Lewis, it's not such a silly reason. It's because Oni-san is our destiny. Whether he should accept that at face value and that it seemed as if he was being made fun of, with those thoughts Subaru glared at Lewis with rage and vigilance. However, Lewis's pupils looking at Subaru, present therein was no falsehood in their ardor. She truly was deeply in love with and yearned for Subaru's life. The reason being, Lewis, men and women of all ages, all kinds of humans, races, positions, anything and everything, leaping above it all and having eaten all kinds of things are us, but there's a single thing, which is unknown to us. Do you know what it is? Subaru, what might it be? I don't know. My good-for-nothing self's way of grieving or something? Lewis, it has the experience of death. Subaru, with one of his eyes remaining shut, halted all movement. Whilst intently watching that Subaru, Lewis lifted up her slim arms and pointed both her palms towards him. Lewis, no matter how many of others' memories are eaten, it's impossible. Only the memories of death can never be obtained. After all, isn't that the way it is? Memories are the record of the period of living after all. That's why, something like the memories of the time of dying don't exist. Only Onii-san is an exception. Lewis seemingly envied, jealous, deeply loved, yearned for the power of return by death from the innermost depths of her heart. The young girl who had grown tired of this world was deeply in love with and yearned for the man who conferred upon her the solitary fresh moment. Lewis, hey, what does death feel like? It's surely rough, right? It's agonizing, right? It's terrible, right? It's painful, isn't it? There was also a time when it didn't hurt, isn't it? Some say it feels good, is that true? When dying, do you actually always feel delighted? Or, do you stop caring anymore? An easy victory? Hey, hi. Subaru, if you have my memories of everything till yesterday, then shouldn't you be knowing all that? Lewis, as memories, you see. But, on second thought, that is old, as it's not real. We want a more raw experience. We can't be satisfied by a reused stale ingredient. What will satisfy us is a new, fresh, and juicy state of mind nobody is aware of. Sue. Resuming her words, saying that is why. Lewis, the sole special memories in this world, which nobody else can experience. Not just that, but the simplicity of just quickly dying and redoing upon making a mistake. Even upon finding the greatest life for oneself, there's always the possibility of ruining it by some sort of failure, isn't that right? But, if it's Onii-san's life, then that isn't there. It's alright, we'll do it well such that nobody will find out. Lewis, neither Amelia, nor Beatrice, nor Ram, nor Maylie, nor Julius, nor Echidna, nor Shala, nor Patrash, nor Petra, nor Otto, nor Garfield, nor Frederica, nor Lewis, nor Roswell, nor Klein, nor Anne Rose, nor Felt, nor Reinhardt, nor Grandpa Ram, nor Tunshinkan, nor Crush, nor Ferris, nor Wilhelm, nor Ricardo, nor Mimi, nor Hitaro, nor Tivy, nor Priscilla, nor Al, nor Schult, nor Heinkel, nor Karitaka, nor Liliana, nobody, no one. Deceiving them all, we will live happily. Making both of her hands, which had been pushed out, project so that they were holding out to him, Lewis adorably tilted her head. Lewis, that's why, please. Let us eat Onii-san's life, such that we fill our stomach? As though pleading, the young girl, from the multitude of memories possessed by herself, must have unmistakably chosen the plead, the dependency utmost befitting of this place. Proof that no matter what kind of ingredients are gathered, should the cooking skills be poor, it'll amount to nothing. There had been a wise saying which Subaru liked, it's not that the ingredients are bad, it's merely the cookery that is bad. Never had he realized that to this extent. Innumerable, multitudinous, numerous experience points ordinary humans could never possess. Never had Subaru come across an existence so wasteful and squandering. Subaru, you won't get a third chance. My anguish, my death, my life, everything belongs to me. There's not a single thing which I'll give you. Subaru, starved to death, bloody bastard. If you can't choose but a single way to die in life, then that's what I'd suggest to you. Suffer the most in this whole world. Gesturing a slash on his own neck with his thumb, Subaru asserted so. In response to those words, Lewis rounded her eyes, then looked at both of her hands. And then, covering her face with those hands, looking up into the white sky, she groaned ah. Lewis, we failed. We did fail. We ended up failing. So we did fail. We did end up failing. We quite indeed ended up failing. We ended up failing, isn't it? As we ended up failing. Ah. With teeth clattering and knees quivering, Lewis sunk down to the floor at that very spot. Her genuinely being astounded was testimony to her coaxing Subaru with equal seriousness. Since the result of that seriousness was that wording, the style of failure of her spiritual nature held no need to be pronounced. Neither did Subaru rescind his gaze, suggesting serves you right whatsoever. Subaru, I won't become as you wished. My name is Natsuki Subaru, the name given to me by Natsuki Kenichi and Natsuki Naoko. Nothing else. I am myself. Lewis, even though it may get overwritten and disappear? Subaru, I'll teach you a magic spell. That is that, this is this. The magic spell he had struck Julius with, this time he shall face himself and strike it. Should Natsuki Subaru be recovered, the Subaru of this moment may disappear. However, it's also possible that he may not disappear. There may be a way to not erase him. He may somehow find a way to share the single spot of sunshine. Subaru, I, who enter into others' hearts with shoes on via speaking bluntly, have no need to be mannerless and occupy the spot of sunshine either. That's my answer. Cut your hair, stupid. Declaring a remark suggesting an act of abandonment, Subaru turned his back towards Lewis. He directed no vigilance towards the young girl sunken to the floor, holding her head. Right now, a way to return from this incomprehensible space was more important than that. As quickly as possible, he must return to Amelia and the others, and once again tackle Reed's Book of the Dead. To begin with, why to this place would Reed's Book of the Dead? Lewis, enough. So there's no choice but to leave the rest to Oniai-chan and Anai-sama, huh? Behind the pondering Subaru, Lewis revealed as though grieving. Hearing that, Subaru, who had his ears on the floor and was knocking the ground, turned around. Lewis was lying sprawled atop her own golden hair, covering her face with her palms, flapping her legs. Oniai-chan and Anai-sama. By names Lewis had often mentioned. If that was just as how Subaru imagined. Subaru, Lei and Roy. Gourmet and bazaar eating? Lewis, we can't exit this place. That's why, unless Oniai-chan and Anai-sama kindly eat, we can't choose what to eat either. That's why we made a request. Subaru, request. Ruminating the words of a bad premonition, Subaru prompted the other side of those words. He felt Lewis took awfully long to vomit out the continuation of those words. Before long, as if tracing Subaru's impatience, Lewis's red lips quivered. Lewis, isn't this the second time Oniai-san has come here since last night? That is why both Oniai-chan and Anai-sama, both of them have noticed. About where Oniai-san is. It was made clear those two menaces now drew near Pleiades' watchtower. Lewis, both of them, said they were keenly interested in Oniai-san, you know. That's a matter of course. Because you know, Oniai-san is abundantly doing experiences which they have never tasted before. Subaru, it. You. Hook. Lewis, how unfair. Lewis casually whispered so, upon Subaru's shivers, having gotten to know the truth. Lewis's whisper, possessing no chain of logic, even Subaru immediately understood what it meant. Subaru, is this an outlet? Behind Subaru, who had turned back, a fissure was generated in the white space and its other side was visible, though flickering. A clear physical disorder, an inconceivable leap through space originating within. Inspired by Subaru's purpose, that he must return to the library. Lewis, you cannot. Oniai-san can never. Though we wanted you to, you know. The existence of the outlet, before he could sail across it, Subaru wavered over Lewis's treatment. Whether it be the sequence of events of him strangling her neck and thereafter, also including her attitude once her ulterior motive had been made clear, it was perhaps true that she possessed no combat power greater than what her appearance suggested. That is why Subaru ending Lewis in this place should physically be possible. Thinking about that, for not but a single instant, the moment he directed his troubled gaze, his true motives got seen through. Lewis, even if you suspect, even if you despair, you can't kill yourself, others, or even those whom you loathe. Spineless coward. Even though we licked you gently. Subaru. Well, your teeth must have gotten spoiled. Get them remedied, stupid. Subaru declared with his middle finger raised, at Lewis, who made a provocative expression. Without seeing through until Lewis felt ashamed by those words, Subaru tried to insert his body into the fissure in space. At that moment, that lone instant, he yielded faltering. It was not as if he felt sorry for Lewis. He felt relieved at the thought of not having to see that face again. What Subaru felt sorry for was not his parting with Lewis, but the voice that made Subaru stand up. For that instant alone, the young girl who had appeared, only to enliven Subaru. Having gotten her memories and name stolen, the sole young girl who consequently called out to Subaru at the extremity of the world. Subaru, it's all right. I remember the promise. Natsuki Subaru shall certainly never forget that. That is why, certainly, they shall meet again. Ruminating that he would like to hear, not merely her stern voice, but also her tender voice then. Enthusiastic for that, Subaru had his body leap into the fissure, in order to return under his comrades. Lewis, god damn it. Not even turning around, what a man, Sue. Louis, won't excuse you. Won't let you escape. Absolutely, absolutely. Sue. Louis, don't think it's over with this, Natsuki Subaru. Sue. Louis, your life belongs to you, Sue. Chapter 62, Tremors of Collapse. As the white world peeled away, the Harlequin world which lied beyond to the other side was slowly reformed. The enormous, rough and overwhelming paintbrush of God daubed colors to the world. It was an exotic sensation, as if witnessing the world being painted with colors from a confined, colorless space. He had heard the legend of God creating the world in 7 days, but it did not seem like God had necessarily assembled the building blocks of the world within 7 days, it rather felt as if God had painted it out on the colorless canvas. The Cradle of O.D. Lagna. Or, the Hall of Memories. Natsuki Subaru's existence was being extracted out from a seemingly different dimension. Being separated from that unfamiliar space into the former world, the fragments of his consciousness gradually tied up, and bit by bit, his self was being reconstructed. Subaru. Subaru, MPH. Hearing that voice, Subaru opened his eyes and was immediately struck upon by thirst. As he blinked over and over again in this world with unclear vision, he realized that his back and hips felt something hard and cold. He was perhaps lying against a wall somewhere. Immediately after that, he noticed signs of an existence before his eyes. In front of Subaru was an anxious girl with a peculiar pattern in her eyes. It was Beatrice, with a flamboyant dress and a cute appearance. Subaru realized that he had returned from the Hall of Memories to the former world, to the Watchtower, to despair and apprehension. Subaru, ah. Beatrice, how's your consciousness, in fact? Are you alright, I suppose? It should be confirmed that you didn't accidentally lose your memories, in fact. First up, do you know Betty? Blinking her eyes, Beatrice touched Subaru's face and chest in the weighty environment. Though she knew that it wasn't something she could confirm by touching him, to someone who's worried, it served as reassurance. With his cheek being touched, Subaru answered and said, I'm fine, I'll be alright, adhering to the mood. Subaru, no problems at all. I do remember. My memories are safe, you. Beatrice, I haven't forgotten about you. Of course, that goes for everyone else as well. Beatrice, well, you'll get praise for calling Betty's name the first, in fact. Having touched Subaru's cheeks, Beatrice let out a sigh of relief and relaxed her eyes upon witnessing him call her name. At her reaction, Subaru also loosened his lips and stroked her head without any hesitation. As he felt Beatrice accept his palm with narrowed eyes, he took a deep breath and Subaru reaffirmed his memories, their safety. Although he had asserted I remember before Beatrice, it was something difficult to affirm. The encounter he had had immediately previously with the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, Louis Arnab. She was unquestionably a monster who had eaten countless names and memories, but to Subaru that ability of hers of apparently eating memories yet remained undetermined. It was uncertain whether actually biting was needed, or just to declare eating, or if it was a further complex procedure. The greater the constraints and commitments, the more complex the requirements, the greater the power granted to one's hands is how it goes. He wanted to deduce it. Regardless, Subaru had no idea whether or not those conditions had been fulfilled in the Hall of Memories in the first place. The truth was he did indeed make physical contact, was bitten in the arm and had gotten licked. If they were the conditions, then he had completely been swept away by the mood and been defeated. Therefore, the possibility of his memories being worm-eaten despite showing no conscious symptoms was sufficiently probable, but Subaru, it's probably fine. The promises and feelings of love are all still within this heart of mine. His heartbeats rose when he thought of Amelia, and felt the desire to caress Beatrice upon being worried. It was proof that he wished for the safety of his comrades, and dubiety disappeared from his mind. He need not proceed alone, at the very least, and he shan't experience those horrors again that way. Natsuki-kun, have you come back? A voice stroked Subaru's eardrums whilst he reaffirmed the presence of his memories in his mind. Raising his face, he saw Echidna with her light purple hair fluttering, with Beatrice beside him. After seeing her step up, Subaru made a laggy realization. Subaru, what about Amelia-chan, and the others? Echidna, good, seems you haven't lost the ability to look around. Do you remember what you had been attempting to do just previously? Seeing Echidna ask pompous queries, Subaru glared back into her pale cerulean eyes and looked at the shadows he sought at the other side. He comprehended that a few of his comrades were missing. It couldn't possibly be something cute that they were hiding behind the various bookshelves within the library. Touching the thick black cover closed on his knee, Subaru exhaled. Right now the members present here were Subaru, Beatrice and Echidna, and Meili. Meili, Oni-san, so you're finally up? You really had us on the edge, it seems you even oversleep. Subaru, oversleep you say? Whilst Meili had her hands on her hips and reprimanded him, Subaru scratched his head. Calming his heart down, Subaru tried determining the situation. He could not see Amelia, Ram, Julius or Shala in this room. Only the aforementioned three were here, and all four of them happened to be non-combatants. Plenty strange in this situation, but what was further strange was... Subaru, it can't be that I woke up right after opening the book, right? How much time was I unconscious for? Beatrice. About an hour, I suppose. Till now the books got finished in a few seconds, so there was concern whether something happened to Subaru, in fact. Subaru, 1 hour. Thanks to Beatrice's answer, Subaru figured out the time lag between the Hall of Memories and reality wasn't large. The challenge he faced now truly was different from what would have happened had he read the Book of the Dead normally. That Hall of Memories really did exist somewhere, and the time he spent there seemed to be legitimate as well. He encountered Lewis, had his heart tormented, licked by Lewis, and tried strangle her throat and deny Natsuki Subaru and was made to refuse that with gently harsh words. There was nothing wrong with the thought that all that time could have been some convenient dream seen by Subaru. However, it couldn't be ignored that a finite amount of time had passed as a matter of fact. Subaru, why are Amelia-chan and the others not with you? Echidna, while you were, quite literally, immersed in that book, some abnormalities came up here as well, you see. The four not present here are going around, dealing with them. Subaru, abnormalities. Echidna, the first one to notice the abnormalities was Shala. It could perhaps be said that it was expected of the one who holds the position of defending this watchtower. Although the content she spoke seemed calm, her tone wasn't. Echidna responded to Subaru's words with a voice into which her repressed sense of urgency was getting leaked. She pointed to the entrance of the room, the staircase which led downstairs. Echidna, Shala said that something was approaching the tower from the outside. She was being quite sharp then. In order to confirm the reason behind the abnormalities, she rushed out, giving nobody the time to even stop her. Meili, the cool Oni-san, then went after her. Meanwhile, the silver-haired Oni-san and the maid Oni-san went to see the sleeping younger sister. Subaru, so that left all four of us in this place. To be honest, though it makes me feel a bit lonely, it was the correct answer. Especially in this situation, I don't want anyone amongst us to have unknown whereabouts. Responding to Echidna and Meili's report, Subaru sighed in response to this situation of utter disarray. Subaru was thankful to Shala, who noticed the concerning matter, to Julius, who followed her, and to Amelia and Ram for their actions as well. If the body of the blue-haired girl, Rem, could be safeguarded, then he could crush all his worries one by one. In face of the emergencies that shall occur hereafter. Echidna, that reaction, Natsuki-kun, do you happen to be aware of something? Echidna asked the abrupt question, seeing Subaru's subtle expressions. Targeted by that mindful gaze, Subaru tried to respond that very second, as he shook his head. There was no need for him to mix up or complicate matters further. All he had to do was to speak those vexing words as they were and let his comrades worry. Subaru, I'll tell you what happened starting from the conclusion. The plan of reading Reed's book and seeing through his past failed. I couldn't see his past, and there's no time for that now. Beatrice, you could not see his past, I suppose? What in the world does that mean, in fact? Subaru, something got in the way. The Sin Archbishop of Gluttony. Beatrice, Huck. Finally, he managed to convey those words. Hearing the words that came from Subaru's mouth, Beatrice blinked her eyes in astonishment. Though Subaru had heard of the words Sin Archbishop for the first time by Lewis, it perhaps wasn't the same for them. Echidna, though it's quite difficult to conceive, the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony is in the book. In this situation, saying that it was in the book has room to be doubted, but you're saying it was in it and? Echidna furrowed her eyebrows and folded her arms, pondering with a strained face. In her eyes levitated doubt, but even greater unease. On top of that, unease directed toward Subaru. It was obvious that her unease directly pointed towards Subaru's memories such that it could be ascertained without words. Subaru, though Beatrice had said the same earlier, I didn't lose my memories. That's what I mean. I haven't forgotten the faces of my friends, and my love for Patrash is still genuine. Meili, I don't know why Dragonchan's name was mentioned there though. Puffing up her cheeks, Meili expressed irritation upon the mention of Subaru's dragon. Her anger was befitting. The truth was, Subaru had the criminal record of losing his memories once already. The presence or absence of his memories was uncertain, and nobody could prove the unconscious, asymptomatic loss of memories. However, only the Subaru present here at this place instead declared that wasn't the case. Subaru, it makes me happy that you're all so worried, but I haven't forgotten anything. I give the stamp of approval. Echidna, I am very doubtful of the existence of that stamp of approval right now. But if you possess such confidence, then I'm sure you must have some basis for it, yes? Subaru, because when I was completely cornered by gluttony, Rem saved me, you see. The potency of the name he had mentioned echoed merely within Beatrice. That's why, whilst Echidna and Melee remained to have a puzzled expression, Beatrice on the other hand was completely astonished, with her eyes twinkling. Subaru nodded in response to that Beatrice. No matter how trivial a memory, the only reason Subaru could boast around having not gotten them stolen by Lewis was solely her existence. In that place, when Subaru's heart was on the verge of shattering, the young girl encouraged him and made him stand up. Her existence did not allow for such an opening to be given to gluttony, was what he believed. Beatrice, Subaru, let's have a detailed explanation, I suppose. That too. Looking directly into Subaru's black eyes, Beatrice asked for a detailed explanation. However, by the ending of the young girl's words, a deathly quake shook the tower, and the shaking sensations repeated. Though it was obvious that the bookshelves would shake, the shaking of the tower itself was obviously unnatural. This was probably because of the emergency that Shala went to take care of. Henceforth, Beatrice blinked merely once. Beatrice, as briefly as possible, in fact. Subaru, when I dove into the Book of the Dead, I was brought to a white, empty place instead of Reed's past. That's where the girl who's the Sin Archbishop of gluttony was, she named herself as Lewis. According to what that Lewis said, that place was something like O.D. Lagna's cradle, the Hall of Memories is how it seems. Inside the tower, with continued tremors pursuing the soles of their feet, Subaru commenced explaining what he had seen in the Book of the Dead. The reality of his encounter with the girl in the white space, and that place being called as the Hall of Memories. The interposition of a supernatural existence, possessing overwhelming strength, O.D. Lagna. Though they were just an unknown bunch of words and phenomena to Subaru, they must be worthwhile information for those who were aware of both the common knowledge and absurdities of this world. In response to what Subaru had explained, Beatrice thoughtfully muttered O.D. Lagna. Subaru, Lewis, said it was a mechanism to keep the world from breaking or something. Do you have any idea about it? Beatrice, Betty isn't well knowledgeable regarding that either, I suppose. But, just that it is the core point of this world. The place where all the mana returns to, is what it said, in fact. Shaking her head in response to the doubt, such was Beatrice's response. Putting her finger on her sliding drills, she continued fidgeting with her soft hair. Beatrice, all mana returns to O.D. Lagna, and gets circulated. In other words, O.D. Lagna is an existence heavily tied with the death and resuscitation of spirits. That's why, it can't be stated as something unrelated to Betty and the others. Echidna, however, we are special due to our origins. Our existence does not go by way of O.D. Lagna. In that sense, unlike other normal spirits, we are able to hold an objective view at O.D. Lagna, I suppose. Subaru, unlike normal spirits, you say? Is that so? So I guess that's behind you all living for long despite your appearance. Echidna took over Beatrice's words, and Subaru was convinced by what she said. Though the topic of conversation itself had gotten deviated, it seemed it was true that Beatrice and Echidna had lived for several hundreds of years. The reason for the longevity of their lives was perhaps their origin of being spirits. Subaru, if you ask me, I think Beatrice's cuteness makes her more of a fairy than a spirit. Beatrice, that, Subaru said that once before too, I suppose. It seems stupid Subaru doesn't know, but fairy is not a compliment here, in fact. That's why, well, Betty can't feel either straightforwardly happy or be angry for being insulted, so it's just weird, I suppose. Subaru, is that so? Apologies for my rudeness, then. Certainly, he had heard that in foreign places home to fantasy, the image of fairies deceiving and harming humans was quite common. If that thought applied to this world as well, then it was natural that calling someone a fairy won't be considered a compliment. Subaru, sorry. I meant that you're so cute that I want to eat you up. Beatrice, the feeling of wanting to eat being complimentary to cuteness is what is strange, in fact. Subaru, is that so? Don't you kinda just feel like putting cute stuff inside your mouth? Melee, that reminds me, bad animalchans carefully take their babies in their mouth and then crunch them to death, isn't it? Beatrice shivered in response to Melee's unnecessary remark. Regardless, the topic had deviated once again. What was crucial here was Echidna, that cradle of O.D. Lagna. What kind of a place is the Hall of Memories? Subaru, the place where souls are filtered, it's even been given that rank, did you know? Echidna, filtering souls. In the sense of filtering and cleansing them? Thinking that the role OD Lagna played was to circulate mana isn't even a laughing matter in front of that. Subaru yet again agreed to Echidna's views. Having witnessed that actual space, Subaru couldn't laugh at it and call it an exaggeration. All of the souls of the dead arrive at the Hall of Memories and get circulated. Afterwards, the soul is washed off of its indelible stains like memories or history collected over the stretch of life, becoming a pure existence and gains a novel life once again. Subaru, I actually think it's a pretty good explanation. The system reuses the souls of the dead. And the memories which get washed over there become books called the Books of the Dead in this library. Echidna, so you say that they don't disappear to someplace, but instead as a matter of fact the world keeps the dead in memory. Looking at these bookshelves, it's not possible to jokingly call you a budding poet either. These bookshelves, banished by this world, recorded everything that reached the Hall of Memories. In other words, the Hall of Memories was a place for compiling and creating the Books of the Dead. A system whereby the memories, having been prepared in the form of books, got placed as Books of the Dead in these bookshelves. And gluttony was acting selfishly with respect to how the memories and history of individuals should originally be, thus putting evil to work. That was precisely the identity of the power endowed upon gluttony. Subaru, if that's true, then the function of filtering souls that OD Lagna was originally supposed to do is arbitrarily being done by them on their own. That way, they gulp down the chipped off memories into their stomachs and have been literally eating the lives of others. When put into words, it could be understood how viscous a deed that was. Much less, Lewis had declared it to be the trial and error for becoming happy. That she would snitch and eat every possible life, and select a joyful life suitable to her from them. It was the equivalent to continually attempting to win a lottery till ultimately hitting victory. As a result of having gained the right to draw the lot boundlessly, Lewis, her elder brothers chose the path of turning others into food and thus forth grasping happiness. That was frightening and dreadful in Subaru's perspective. Not Lewis and the others' judgment. But the fact that their thought was not something special, something abnormal. Should one gain the right to draw the lot boundlessly, anyone would draw until hitting victory. That's why the actions of Louis Arnab were a desire exceedingly, respectably, wholly human. Beatrice, even if that's the case, you're not supposed to continue drawing the lot knowing others will be sacrificed, I suppose. Subaru, Beatrice. Beatrice, knowing that there will be sacrifices but still continuing to draw the lot, is not the way a sane person would think, in fact. That's why there exists no room for sympathy for a sin archbishop, I suppose. Reading into Subaru's idea, Beatrice declared flatly. That was an extremely clear distinction. Being trapped in the thought itself was unworthy of compassion. Beatrice was well aware of Subaru's true thoughts and had merely said the word Subaru himself was unable to say. Yes, there was no room for sympathy. The persons themselves may not be responsible for the situation they were placed in, or for lacking a place to belong. Even so, misstepping the very first step and thereafter continuing to travel down the wrong path is the person's choice. No matter who, they must get the fruit for their actions. Melee, but it's pretty strange. Why did the book, despite knowing the details of when he was alive, connected to that unknown place, huh? Subaru, that's because the soul of a dead person is recycled in the Hall of Memories, so the book sold in wholesale connected directly to its producer. No, that explanation is incomplete. Subaru was unable to clearly clarify Melee's doubts. Why did Reed's Book of the Dead connect to the Hall of Memories? At the very least, the Subaru prior to losing memories was supposed to have read a Book of the Dead at least once. He had heard that Julius also read one at the same timing, and he had even already experienced reading Melee's book in a former loop. But within those experiences, there was no record of the reader being thrown into that space. Then they should perhaps consider it to be Lewis's interference. Subaru, but it looked like gluttony didn't intend to summon me. It felt like my arrival was out of calculations for even her. So she's not supposed to have used some tactic on Reed's Book of the Dead. Beatrice, Betty has one hypothesis, in fact. In front of Subaru, who was drowned in his thoughts, said Beatrice with a finger raised. Looking at her fingertip, Subaru said hypothesis, and asked her to continue. Subaru, tell us. What possibilities can you think of? Beatrice, the books of the dead in the library record the memories that get stripped away from souls in the Hall of Memories, I suppose. The normal mechanism is to read them in the form of a book. But, what do you think will happen if that record will be used for other purposes, in fact? Subaru, using the memories of the dead in a way other than books of the dead? But, how else can they be used aside from being books of the dead? Echidna, I see, is that so? Intelligent indeed, Beatrice. Subaru, furrowed his eyebrows in response to Beatrice's words. But Echidna interjected with seeming comprehension. Not just that, following up with Echidna, even Meili put her fingers on her mouth and said, Meili, could it refer to that? Subaru, wait, don't make a face as if you understand. You really hate losing, huh? It's nice finding a new part of yourself like that, but just honestly saying you don't understand what you don't, like a child, is perfectly forgiven. That's the position you're in. Meili, isn't Oni-san the one here who hates losing, huh? Even I can properly understand when I put my thoughts to it and then say that I do. The redhead Oni-san above is like that, isn't he? Brushing Subaru aside with her hands, Meili confirmed to Beatrice. Subsequently, Beatrice let out a sigh. Beatrice, Meili's idea is correct, I suppose. Reed is, like that, in fact. Subaru, that means? Echidna, Reed's past could not be referred to through his Book of the Dead. That is because there is no record of Reed Astrea actually in it. Reed's record right now is being used differently in order to reconstruct Reed Astrea in this tower as the trial taker. Subaru, ah. Hearing Echidna's explanation, Subaru finally came to understand as well. It was convincing if that were indeed the case. It did not contradict what all happened as a result of Subaru reading the Book of the Dead. Beatrice, Reed's memories are being utilized not for being read but for reconstruction, I suppose. It can be conjectured why Subaru couldn't read them earlier, in fact. Subaru, along with that, it also explains how the me of yesterday got memories eaten by Lewis at the Hall of Memories. It was beyond doubt that the Subaru who was there until yesterday had noticed the same way of capturing Reed as the current Subaru. The fact that as a result of trying it out, he read Reed's book in the library and was sent to that white world as well. The truth was, Lewis herself had said that this was her second meeting Subaru since last night. She ate Subaru's memories upon their first contact and tried to consume even the leftovers when they met the second time. Subaru, but if you take that into consideration, then this book can never be used as Reed's capture book, huh? No, forget about that. This is a dangerous book that would send you straight to an unwished one-on-one confrontation with gluttony. Echidna, I suppose so. Regardless, though unexpected, it is fortunate that we figured out the reason behind Natsuki-kun's memory loss. Taking memories away was not a function of the tower. Because for the moment, the tower likely didn't aim to create a trap which led to contact with gluttony. Subaru, I guess that's true. It was unknown whether the creator of the tower had taken into account the transition to being before an instantaneous death. It was perhaps only incidental that it ended up like this, is what he'd like to believe. Otherwise, the personage who prepared the installations in this tower possessed an extremely destructive way of thinking, or possessed a personality nasty like a demon. Though Subaru had no memories of it, Shala referred to them as Master Sama and claimed them to be the same person as Subaru, so he currently feared greater damage caused by gossip. Subaru, Reed was reconstructed, the book was one which was empty. That's why that Book of the Dead connected directly to Od Lagna. Would that be correct? Beatrice, that's the only hypothesis as of now, I suppose. It's still a mystery why one of gluttony was hidden and lurking in there, in fact. But, the one thing that can be said is the series of inexplicable events that happened around Reed's Book of the Dead. There was one hypothesis around that. Naturally, questions whose answers were yet undiscovered remain unanswered. However, unfortunately, Subaru and the others did not have the time to ponder over that question. Its proof being, Echidna. Is everyone alright? Rushing up the stairs, a solitary knight arrived in this archive of Teijida. Echidna quickly turned her head backwards and rounded her eyes. Echidna, Julius, you seem in quite the hurry, don't you? Julius, unexpected matters have come up. I want to hear everyone's thoughts as soon as possible. HM. The good-looking young man, Julius, approached them whilst answering Echidna's question. He had stiffened his cheeks with faint nervousness and vigilance, but upon seeing Subaru eye-to-eye sitting on the floor, his yellow eyes slightly widened. Julius, so you have woken up, Subaru. That is indeed very fortunate. Do you know who I am? Subaru, I guess so, that worry comes first. So you are. Julius, I knew it. Subaru, I'm lying. I'm joking. You are Julius Juculius. What's up with that? I knew it with that serious face of yours. I came back all well and good. Julius, humph. I was also joking. Think of it as payback for your incurable childishness. Now I shall be telling you something which slightly isn't laughable. Subaru made a strained expression, having gotten cornered in the argument. Snorting in response to Subaru's reaction, Julius subsequently braced his expression without any delay. Just as what he said, he perhaps intended to report something which wasn't something to laugh at. Julius, while I would like to hear Subaru's report back from the Book of the Dead, this is an emergency. The abnormalities Miss Shala noticed have been confirmed outside of the tower. Subaru, I can't see that Shala anywhere though. Julius, she is dealing with the threat from the outer wall of the tower at this very moment. However, that will surely not suffice. Subaru glared at Julius, gesturing the roundabout nature of his words. Receiving that sharp gaze, Julius let out a short sigh and commenced by saying apologies. Julius, you all must have also noticed that there are slight tremors. They are footsteps. Subaru, footsteps? Julius, yes. Subaru and the others tilted their heads upon the unexpected word, and seeing them, Julius inhaled for a second and resumed. Julius, the witch beasts which existed in various parts of Augria sand dunes are charging towards this tower all at once. Although Miss Shala is fighting them back, it is only a matter of time before they manage to break through inside. End of chapters 61 and 62, stand up.